Hello everyone. I am midway through this demo because my recording just got corrupted, but I'm talking about engineer weapons in a competitive context. So for starters, as far as footage is concerned, I play very little scout, meaning I also play very little engineer, because basically always if someone is off-classing to engineer, it's going to be a scout doing so. Yep, shoot the sticky. And if that beef, and this beef is any indication, the primary reason that I even played engineer in this demo is because I was just so worthless on scout that, I figured, hey, may as well. And it does kind of work, to be honest. So here on Bagel, it will be kind of a full-time engineer type of style. I do have, oh, my game just minimized. We're back. I do have another demo, which is a more traditional engineer gameplay in sixes, which is me setting up on last and just maintaining the gun for a rock solid last hold on Snakewater. Yeah, and I don't know where in the demo that is, so hopefully I can just babble for long enough that we get to that point. I think it is relatively early in the demo, however. So with that being said, let's talk engineer weapons. Now, engineer is a class with a few broken unlocks and does have some banned weapons. As far as I'm aware, it is both unlockable secondaries, that being the short circuit and the Wrangler. Thank God those are both banned because they are horrible weapons to play against. And then the other one, I think, is the Rescue Ranger. I don't think there's any other banned weapons for engineer. If there are, it's escaping me. But all three of those tools generally make holding last or maintaining a gun in a disad last situation easier, and competitive players generally like the balance of things right now as far as how much uber a sentry gun can waste, as far as the risk reward element for an engineer to try to maintain their gun through the uber rather than just completely give it up. There is a fair amount of skill expression there and decent balance that pushing last is not easy, but it's at least high enough percentage that a team is adequately rewarded for securing that ad, because you had to make some correct decisions and good plays to get to that point to begin with. So anyway, where do I start? Engineer has a lot of primaries. Most of its primaries are totally fine to use and pretty inconsequential to use. That being stock, the Panic Attack is fine. The other Widowmaker is fine. I do see some engineers actually prefer Widowmaker just because you don't really have to reload it. But in an engineer setting on last, very rarely are you going to be even shooting like 6 shots in a row. So it's generally inconsequential. There are a couple standouts here that you'll notice I missed as far as primaries are concerned. And let's talk about the almost useless one first, which is the Pomson. Pomson I see get used, but it's only for the funniness factor, because engineer, you're not generally engaged in combat that much, and in fact, you really, really don't want to risk your life as an engineer at all, because you exist to have the gun on last, and if you die, then that gun is extremely easy to spam, meaning the gun can go down effortlessly, right? You can see this beef, part of the reason why I'm switching off in a couple rounds. So as an engineer, you hate dying, basically under any circumstances whatsoever. So you aren't going to be engaged in combat that often. That being said, those shotguns I mentioned earlier, still absolutely useful because you can help out with bombs. You can help actually like clear stickies and shoot people, and having a shotgun is nice, but it's also funny to have the Pomson. Unironically though, I have seen the Pomson work for its actual proper use case, which I don't even know if there are people who have it work for its actual use case in casual, but the situation was on Metalworks last. It's getting close to the end of the round timer, meaning that the other team, in order to avoid resetting to a mid-fight, because they already have the midpoint, they already have our second point as well. So that would very much lose them ground. They have to fight a new mid-fight, fight for a point that they already have, and lose another point that they already have. So generally teams want to avoid that round reset when they're pressuring into last. And one of the main ways that teams do this is with an Uber exchange, is generally a common play right now. One that I'm actually kind of liking less and less. I prefer more drastic options because the exchange generally feels very low percentage a lot of the time. But anyway, an Uber exchange into last is a very common plan for teams, and your main objectives here are to A, take out the sentry gun, B, get the other team to use so it's not disad, and then C, get out for the post so that you're not stuck in the doors and stuck inside last dying, because you have a serious number disadvantage because it's only the players that are Ubering in versus the entire enemy team. And once you get out, once you've bought space with the gun being down and you know the other team can't use an Uber to stuff you, then maybe you can try and get through the doorways and make some type of post-Uber fight on last happen before the round resets and get some form of value, right? So that's a common play. And on this particular round reset attempt, not really the right word, but nearing this round reset, the opposing team walked main through Metalworks. As my engineer just so happened to be spamming the Thompson, hit their medic so they no longer have an Uber to use, and they end up just all exploding in the doorway because I, as the demo, killed them all. So they weren't even able to use their Uber because the Thompson hit the med. One of the only times I've seen the Thompson use case work. And it's funny enough to like make a fun story. So honestly, like, yeah, the engineer primaries, you don't have to be super optimal with it, as evidenced by the fact that there are some people that use the Thompson just because it's pretty funny, if nothing else. Yeah. There is one unlock that I have not talked about for the primaries, and let me make sure actually there aren't any others that I'm failing to talk about. Isn't my engineer so beautiful? Yes, we've covered everything except the Frontier Justice, which is generally the preferred shotgun, or at least one that you absolutely want to switch to if you have the time to and your gun has a kill, because crits are really strong, and those on-demand crits can be really strong. Now, the Frontier Justice, in my opinion, is a double-edged sword, because I've seen plenty of engineers who have crits, whether that be sometimes even just one or two, will decide to go forward and basically just feed with them. You see some really cool clips of engineers absolutely popping off, like pushing out of last successfully unseen, and then like two-shotting a medic, or even one-shotting a medic in some cases, getting a drop, things like that, getting untold amounts of value, because these crits, again, are really, really powerful. But what you don't see is all the clips of the engineers trying to push out because they're feeling themselves and they have these crits, and they end up just feeding. And again, you really, really never want to be dying an engineer. It's just a class that you'd much prefer to switch off of to something else before dying in those last situations. So that being said, really very little reason to switch to it, or little reason not to switch to it when you have kills on your gun. You really never see engineers destroy their gun for the crits, unless the other team is like completely incapable of pressuring, like they're down multiple players. You might want to cash in on those crits, but by and large, you just have it ready for if your gun goes down, and then you have a bunch of crits, which can absolutely help out defensively. You can totally be peeking doors and getting damage and whatnot, but not usually a shotgun that's that consistent to just have on by default, because again, only 3 shots is a bit of a downside compared to something like stock. So it's more of a switch to weapon. And this tends to be the case with a lot of engineers unlocks, is they are situational and you kind of switch to them given the situation. As you'll see more so when I get into the wrenches. So yeah, that's it for the primaries. Secondaries, again, it's just going to be stock. I believe engineer can use the Luger morph, right? I use the capper. I like the laser beams, but yeah, it is overall, you're just using pistols, so nothing else to be said there. However, for the wrenches, this is where things get a little interesting. So 95% of the time, engineers are just going to be using the Jag, and you should be using the Jag for most situations in which you're playing Engie, because again, as I mentioned earlier, you really exist for the gun, and you want that gun to be up as fast as possible. And this applies to not only disad well, it applies especially to Tizad for starters, because the sooner that you can get a gun up and leveled, the more robust your hold is going to be. So if, for example, the other team is at 70%, then you usually have like a decent amount of time to set up a gun, at least at the spawn or something like that. But if the other team's at like 80%, suddenly might be a little close. And what the Jag does is it enables you to get that gun up and actually have a robust hold in when the other team is even closer to getting Uber or even closer to taking their push, rather than you need those extra percents to get the gun up because it's generally slower. So overall, it is a, I think this might be where the engineer starts. We'll see. So overall, Jag is like by far the most preferred option for engineers, just because you want to get those guns up as fast as possible. And this does apply to evens as well, as I was mentioning earlier, because while yes, you aren't in as much of a rush because you're not expecting an impending disad hold and the other team to be pushing with an Uber, you are, however, expecting the other team to be pressuring and sacking. And the sooner that you have your gun up, the sooner that you can really be in that hold and really be comfortable, right? I think before we get into the other traditional wrenches, we'll throw in the Gunslinger, because that's what's on the screen right now. So for really any full-time NG application, it's almost always the Gunslinger. Extra health, of course, is nice, and the minis are just very spammable. And yeah, while yes, a level 1 is generally like a stronger gun than a mini sentry, it is harder to spam them because they cost more, and also against an organized team with 3 spam classes, being 2 soldiers and a demo, you're not going to have you're not going to have luck keeping up a level 1 for that matter. So if the gun's going to go down very easily anyway, then it may as well just be a mini sentry that you can instantly plop down another one, as you saw just a minute ago. So yeah, Gunslinger is definitely the full-time engineer unlock. That is what people use outside of Last if they're playing NG outside of Last for whatever reason. Which, to be clear, I don't recommend. You can actually see my guns are doing nothing. They just absorb 2 rockets. Hey, that soldier got baited into shooting the dispenser though. So there's that. So yeah. The Gunslinger, pretty much just the non-Last option. Gunslinger on Last is pretty bad. Yeah, you shouldn't be playing Gunslinger on Last at all, because you should probably be switching to a defensive off class when your gun goes down instead of trying to place another one. And again, as I mentioned earlier, a mini sentry is just a less strong version of a level 1, and you will always have time for like a level 1 at least. So really no reason to be using Gunslinger on Last. Yeah, so let's move into some of the other wrenches, and we can talk next about something that really never gets used, the Southern Hospitality. It just doesn't really provide any strong bonuses or negatives, so I suppose you'll see it get used if you like how it looks. It does have, it's just the fire vulnerability and bleed, yeah. You're almost never hitting someone with your wrench in a 6's setting, and you're almost never on fire as an engineer in a 6's setting, so neither of those matter. It is effectively no different from stock, pretty much. Yeah, what next? Next, I suppose we can talk about stock, and stock is a much better maintenance wrench than the Jag. So if people really are trying to optimize, then you will switch off of the Jag in a Last situation when you've already built the gun. So if you no longer need the benefits of the Jag in construction and constructing the gun quickly. Oh, interesting thing about that is I point the gun facing the corner so that, it's slow to turn, meaning ideally the player is already quite committed by the time they start getting shot, so it's harder for them to then duck away behind a corner or something like that. Yeah, that's just the thought process there. But anyway, what was I talking about? I was talking about, yeah, stock, better maintenance wrench than the Jag, something you might switch to after everything's already constructed. And that is that demo. So what was the next one? I have the log open here. This was August 22nd. Man, this is so annoying to navigate. This was at 1049, which looks like this guy. And there's probably some pre-game stuff I have to skip through. What else was there for us to talk about? Is there another... There is a wrench that I have in mind that I know I haven't covered yet. And we might just skip... I don't know how pleasant it's going to be viewing just the super fast skipping. I really should have looked up the tick for when we got on last year, because we are, I think, on the last weapon. Let me look here. At the engineer wrenches, I'm pretty sure the last one to talk about is the Eureka Effect, yes. I was wondering if there was anything else. Oh, hold on. We're here on last, and you get to see the Eureka Effect in action, right? So here I am on the Jag, and if I were to be optimal with this, then I would have multiple different loadouts with these different weapons equipped, so it's very easy to just resupply bind and switch between them. I don't, because I have the Gunslinger on a loadout for when I play pubs, but yeah, just normal engineer stuff. And Snakewater Last is a hold where it's so difficult to do anything against this gun. The only place that it's really spammable without fully committing is through lower. But if you tank your pocket soldier, then lower is just very difficult to spam out. And for either side left, and you can see right now I open up the menu because I'm switching to Eureka Effect. So any other, and I'm placing the exit here, meaning I now get to teleport to and from spawn without necessarily having to cross a sniper sightline, which isn't as huge of a deal on Snakewater. It's a little easier to control the deep sniper peaks, at least from top right. A demo is usually going to be able to carpet that out, but a sniper can very easily be sitting in drop down and might be spotting left spawn. So being able to teleport between spawns is quite nice. And again, Eureka Effect has that same maintaining property of stock, meaning it is better at maintaining your buildings than the Jag is. So just that extra utility of being able to teleport around and get metal at a moment's notice definitely makes the Eureka Effect probably the go-to wrench for maintaining buildings on last. But again, it's so horrible at building them that you want the Jag for that. But yeah, this is kind of the rock-solid hold of Snakewater. I was talking about how the gun is much less spammable from the left or the right, because you definitely need to take space through those doors already, which means you need to get past a spam class, whether that be a roamer on the left side or a demo on the right side. And that's a tough thing to do, because oh, I'm telling my medic that he can stand down here and not get sniped from the shutter peak, just as the shutter is getting peaked, and look at that, he's safe. What was my train of thought there? Yeah, you already need to spam the guy off the door, which is step 1. And then after that, you need to actually, like, get the gun. You can see they get space through this door, but then my demo gets healthy again and starts to re-peak, and my gun is doing work, gets an assist. It's very difficult. Snakewater Last can be very tough to break. And you'll notice at this point that my gun has 2 kills and 1 assist. Meaning, I would not be surprised if right about now oh no, I already have the Frontier Justice. I switched to it earlier. So yeah, just comfy engineer gameplay here. This is generally what NG looks like in 6s. And this is a very, very important class to have, because you can see how important this gun is. The other team is very concerned with my gun because they don't want to just send a sack to go die to the gun. That's going to be very low percentage. They want to take it out first, which is tough to do. Again, the primary focus of that demo, trying to take out my gun. So maybe this could also be a living example of why like a class limit 1 on engineer exists, because if we could have 2 of these guns, we would have 2 of these guns, and then there's even less that the other team can do, because it's no longer about get past the spam on a door to spam down the gun. Now it's get past the spam on the door and then get past the gun watching the door, because you have enough guns to watch every door, and my med just gets backstabbed. Okay. Thank you, Sushi, for ruining my example of why guns are so good. Anyway, yeah, moving it there just so it's harder to take out for when they push inevitably with their incoming ad, because they just backstabbed our med. Only 5 seconds left, though, so they definitely need cap time. Again, the gun facing the wall just so the players commit out a little bit more. Not super important, but we are able to secure the reset nonetheless. So I think we'll call things there. Hope you guys enjoyed. Yeah, see you all next time.